The glass doors of Peak Pulse Media gleamed under the Denver sun, reflecting the jagged peaks of the Rockies in the distance. Inside, the hum of corporate life buzzed, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the faint scent of overpriced coffee lingering in the air. For 6 years, this had been my world. My name is Emma Carter, 31, a marketing whiz who'd clawed her way from coffee runs to managing the firm's biggest accounts. I'd built a client portfolio worth millions, turned failing campaigns into industry darlings, and earned the trust of Blue Ridge Innovations, a tech giant that accounted for nearly a third of Peak Pulse's revenue. But at 9:02 a.m. on a crisp April Tuesday, that world came crashing down. I was halfway through an email to a client when my desk phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed. Catherine Reynolds, Executive Director. My stomach twisted. Catherine didn't call unless something was wrong, or someone was about to be. I smoothed my blazer, took a deep breath, and picked up. "Emma, my office, now." Her voice was sharp, like a blade slicing through static. No pleasantries, no context, just a command. I glanced around the open plan office. My colleagues were buried in their screens, oblivious to the storm brewing. Megan Walsh, the receptionist, caught my eye from her desk near the entrance. She raised an eyebrow, mouthing, "What's up?" I shrugged, forcing a smile, but my pulse quickened as I walked toward Catherine's corner office. The frosted glass door loomed like a guillotine. Inside, Catherine sat behind her imposing mahogany desk, her platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun. Her tailored navy suit screamed power, but her eyes, cold, unyielding, screamed something else. Disdain. She didn't look up as I entered, her manicured nails tapping a slow, deliberate rhythm on a piece of paper, an email, printed and highlighted in neon yellow. My heart sank. I knew what this was before she even spoke. "Sit," she said, her voice like frost on a January morning. I lowered myself into the leather chair across from her, clutching my purse to steady my hands. The air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't name. Betrayal? Revenge? Or something darker? "Emma," she began, finally meeting my gaze. "I consider this disloyalty." She slid the email across the desk, her movements precise, almost theatrical. "Care to explain?" I glanced at the paper. The subject line screamed in bold, "Interview confirmation, Blue Ridge Innovations, Thursday, 1:30 p.m. My throat tightened. Last Thursday, I'd taken a half day, claiming a dental appointment. A lie, yes, but a necessary one. After 3 years of denied raises, 3 years of tight budgets while Catherine flaunted her new Lexus SUV and Peak Pulse leased a shiny new floor for expansion, I'd had enough. I'd updated my resume, reached out to Michael Brooks, Blue Ridge's CEO, and landed an interview. I hadn't planned to leave without notice. I was too professional for that. But I needed to know my worth. Apparently, Catherine had other ideas. I started, but she cut me off, her hand slicing the air. "Don't bother denying it," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You thought you could sneak around behind my back? After everything Peak Pulse has done for you?" Her voice dripped with condescension, as if I were a child caught stealing cookies. 6 years, Emma. 6 years of opportunities, mentorship, trust. And this is how you repay us? The injustice burned in my chest. Opportunities? I'd started as a glorified intern making coffee runs while my marketing degree from the University of Colorado gathered dust. Mentorship? Catherine had barely spoken to me outside performance reviews, where she'd praise my work but dodge my raise requests. Trust? That was a one-way street. I'd trusted Peak Pulse to value me, and they'd failed spectacularly. "Catherine," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I've given everything to this company. I tripled my client portfolio, brought in Blue Ridge, and delivered campaigns that won awards. I've asked for fair compensation 3 times, and each time—" "Enough," she barked, slamming her palm on the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Don't lecture me about fairness. You went behind my back, Emma. You interviewed with our biggest client. Do you have any idea how that looks? How it undermines me? This company?" Her words stung. but they also sparked something in me. Anger. Not the reckless kind, but the quiet, focused kind that sharpens your senses. She wasn't just angry, she was threatened. I'd seen it before, in the way she'd insert herself into my Blue Ridge meetings, stealing credit for ideas she'd barely understood. Catherine had been Peak Pulse's star account executive before moving to management, and deep down, she missed the spotlight. I was a reminder of what she'd lost. I wasn't trying to undermine anyone, I said, meeting her gaze. I was exploring options because my contributions haven't been recognized. 3 years, Catherine, 3 years of record profits, and I'm still paid below market rate. Her lips curled into a smirk, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Market rate? You think you're indispensable, don't you? Let me make this clear. No one is bigger than this company. Not you, not anyone. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging between us. I could have argued, listed my achievements, how I'd saved the Blue Ridge account when their previous manager fumbled, how their CEO, Michael Brooks, had personally requested me after I'd turned a PR crisis into a viral campaign. But I saw it in her eyes. This wasn't about facts. This was personal. She leaned back, folding her arms. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will meet you at your desk. Your email access is already disabled, and your badge, she slid my company ID across the desk like it was trash, is no longer valid. The finality of it hit me like a punch. Terminated, escorted out, humiliated. I'd seen it happen to others, quiet layoffs, whispered exits, but never imagined it would be me. My hands trembled, but I refused to let her see it. I stood, straightening my blazer, and forced myself to meet her gaze. I understand, I said, my voice calm, almost serene. Catherine blinked, clearly expecting tears or outburst. Instead, I extended my hand across the desk. I wish you and Peak Pulse continued success. Her smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of confusion. She hesitated, then shook my hand, her grip limp and uncertain. You're taking this well, she said, almost to herself. I've learned to adapt, I replied, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Let her wonder what that meant. As I turned to leave, she called after me, Emma. I paused, glancing back. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice carried a strange edge. Don't think this is the end. Actions have consequences. The words hung in the air, cryptic and unsettling. Was it a threat? A warning? Or just Catherine trying to reclaim control? I didn't respond. I walked out, the frosted glass door closing behind me with a soft thud. The open-plan office felt like a stage, every eye subtly tracking me as I returned to my desk. Ethan Hayes, the IT specialist, looked up from his monitor, his brow furrowing. Megan Walsh mouthed, "You okay?" from the reception desk. I nodded, forcing another smile, but my mind was racing. Consequences. What did Catherine mean? Had she dug deeper into my job search? Did she know something I didn't? A security guard, Tom, a burly guy I chatted with during lunch breaks, appeared at my side, looking apologetic. Sorry, Emma, he muttered. Orders. It's fine, Tom, I said, my voice steady. I opened a drawer and began packing, a framed photo of my parents, a cactus I'd nursed through 3 winters, a notebook filled with campaign ideas. 6 years of my life reduced to a cardboard box. Colleagues whispered, their glances a mix of sympathy and fear. No one wanted to be next. As I packed, my phone buzzed in my purse. I glanced at it discreetly. A text from Rachel Turner, my best friend and a freelance graphic designer who'd worked with Peak Pulse. Effin just texted me. WTF is happening? Are you okay? I typed a quick reply. Fired. Long story. Call you later. Before I could slip the phone back, another message popped up. This one stopped me cold. Michael Brooks, CEO of Blue Ridge Innovations. Heard what happened. Can we move our discussion to 2 p.m. today? My breath caught. Discussion? Michael had been vague during our interview, saying Blue Ridge was exploring options for their marketing partnerships. I'd assumed it was a standard interview, a chance to gauge my fit, but this, reaching out hours after my firing with no preamble, felt different, urgent. What did he know, and how had he heard so fast? I tucked the phone away, aware of Tom's hovering presence. "Ready?" he asked, shifting uncomfortably. "Yeah," I said, lifting the box. As we walked toward the glass doors, I felt the weight of every stare, but I held my head high, my steps measured. No drama, no tears, just dignity. Outside, the Denver sun was blinding, the air crisp with the promise of spring. I placed the box in my car trunk, the cardboard sagging slightly under its own weight. For a moment I stood there, the reality sinking in, unemployed, betrayed. But as I slid into the driver's seat, Michael's text flashed in my mind, a lifeline in the chaos. Catherine thought she'd broken me. She had no idea what was coming. At home, I set the box on my kitchen counter, its contents a stark reminder of the morning's upheaval. My apartment, a cozy one-bedroom with a view of the city skyline, felt both safe and suffocating. I poured a glass of water, my hands still trembling, and sank onto a stool. The silence was deafening. No emails pinging, no office chatter. Just me and my thoughts. Rachel called before I could spiral. "Emma, what the hell?" she said, her voice a mix of outrage and concern. "Ethan says Catherine went full dictator, called you disloyal in front of everyone. What happened?" I recounted the meeting, my voice steady but my emotions raw. "She found out I interviewed with Blue Ridge, fired me on the spot, had security escort me out like I'd stolen company secrets." "That's insane," Rachel said. "You're the only reason Blue Ridge didn't ditch Peak Pulse years ago. Catherine's just jealous. You're better at her old job than she ever was." I managed a weak laugh. "Maybe, but it's not just jealousy." She said something weird as I left. "Actions have consequences." Like she's planning something. "Planning what?" Rachel asked. "She already fired you. What's left?" "I don't know," I admitted, but it felt personal, like there's more to this than the interview. Rachel snorted. "She's probably panicking about Blue Ridge. Without you, that account's toast. Ethan says she's been glued to her office phone all morning." Before I could respond, my phone beeped with an incoming call. "Michael Brooks." "Rachel, I gotta take this," I said, switching lines. "Emma," Michael said, his tone warm but direct. "I heard about Peak Pulse. Are you free to come in at 2 p.m.? I'd like to accelerate our conversation." My mind raced. "Yes, I can make it, but how did you hear so fast?" A pause, then a low chuckle. "Let's just say news travels quickly in this industry. I'll explain when you get here. And Emma, don't worry about this morning. Sometimes things work out the way they're meant to." I hung up, staring at my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman looking back wasn't defeated. She was pissed, yes, but also determined. Catherine had humiliated me, but she'd also lit a fire. Whatever game she was playing, I wasn't out yet. I showered, changed into my sharpest suit, a charcoal gray number I reserved for big pitches, and applied my makeup with precision. The ritual grounded me, each step a reminder of who I was. Not just Emma Carter, fired employee, but Emma Carter, the woman who'd turned Blue Ridge's marketing from a mess into a masterpiece. The woman who'd earned her place, even if Peak Pulse couldn't see it. As I drove to Blue Ridge's headquarters, Catherine's words echoed. Actions have consequences. What did she know? Had she leaked something to sabotage my chances with Blue Ridge? Or was she digging into my past looking for dirt? I'd always been professional, but no one's perfect. A forgotten email, a casual comment, anything could be twisted in the wrong hands. Blue Ridge's building was a stark contrast to Peak Pulse's dated office. A towering glass structure in downtown Denver, it screamed innovation. Sleek lines, reflective surfaces, and a lobby buzzing with young professionals. I rode the elevator to the 30th floor, my nerves humming. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a turning point. Michael Brooks greeted me in the reception area, his salt and pepper hair and easy smile putting me at ease. "Emma, thanks for coming on short notice," he said, shaking my hand. "Let's talk in my office." As we walked through the open workspace, I noticed familiar faces. Blue Ridge employees I'd worked with on campaigns. They nodded or waved, their smiles genuine. Unlike Peak Pulse's tense atmosphere, this place felt alive, collaborative, a place where talent was valued, not punished. Michael's office was modest but welcoming, with a small sofa and a coffee table instead of an intimidating desk. He offered me coffee, and I accepted, cradling the warm mug as he leaned forward. "I got a call from Catherine this morning," he said, his tone neutral. "She told me you're no longer with Peak Pulse, and that she'll personally oversee our account until a replacement is found." I nodded, keeping my expression calm despite the anger simmering inside. Of course Catherine would try to swoop in, claiming Blue Ridge as her own. "What she doesn't know," Michael continued, "is that we've been concerned about Peak Pulse for a while. Delayed responses, sloppy deliverables. Except for your work, you've been the glue holding that relationship together." I blinked, caught off guard. I didn't realize. I mean, our last campaign beat projections by 23%? "Exactly," he said, smiling, "because of you. But the rest of Peak Pulse? They're coasting on your success. Our board started looking at other agencies 3 months ago. I held them off because of our trust in you." My mind spun. Trust. A word Catherine had thrown around, but Michael meant it. "So what does this mean?" I asked, my voice cautious. He opened a folder and slid a document across the table. "This isn't an interview, Emma. It's an offer. Director of Client Strategy. You'd build and lead a team to manage all our external marketing partnerships. The salary reflects your experience and your results." I glanced at the paper, and my breath caught. The number was nearly double my Peak Pulse salary, more than I'd dared hope for in my last raise request. "This is incredible," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's what you're worth," Michael said firmly. "Sometimes it takes a push to see that." I looked up, meeting his gaze. "Why now? I mean, you could have waited for me to give notice." He leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "We were prepared to. But Catherine's move this morning changed the timeline. And frankly, Emma, I think you're ready for more than Peak Pulse could ever offer. There's just one thing I need to know." I braced myself. "What's that?" He smiled, but his eyes were serious. "Are you ready to step into a bigger role? Because once you're in, we're counting on you to shake things up." The question hung in the air, both a challenge and an invitation. I thought of Catherine's smirk, her cryptic warning, the cardboard box sitting on my counter. Then I thought of the past 6 years. Every late night, every client win, every time I'd swallowed my frustration and kept going. I was ready. More than ready. "I'm in," I said, my voice steady. Michael's smile widened. "Good. Take the offer home, review it. We'll finalize tomorrow. And Emma, one last thing." "Yes?" "Whatever Catherine's planning, don't let it get to you. She's fighting a losing battle." His words sent a chill down my spine. Planning. He'd picked up on it too. But what? As I left his office, the offer letter in my purse, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about a job. There was a bigger game at play. One Catherine had started, and I was now a key player in. That night I sat on my balcony, the Denver skyline twinkling below. The offer letter lay on the table, signed and ready to return. My phone buzzed with texts from Peak Pulse colleagues, Ethan, Megan, even a few clients who'd heard whispers. The office was in chaos, they said. Catherine was holed up in her office, making frantic calls. Rumors swirled that Blue Ridge was reconsidering their contract. Then a new message arrived from an unknown number. "Emma, this is Susan Mitchell, Peak Pulse board member. We need to talk. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Catherine may have overstepped. Can you meet?" I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. The board. Catherine's bosses. If they were involved, this was bigger than a personal vendetta. What had she done? And what did they know that I didn't? As I sipped my wine, one thing was clear. Catherine had lit the match, but I was the one holding the flame. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into Peak Posts, not as a fired employee, but as a woman who knew her worth. And whatever game Catherine was playing, I was ready to win. The Denver skyline shimmered under a veil of twilight, its lights winking like stars against the darkening sky. From my balcony, I sipped a glass of Pinot Grigio, the cool spring air brushing my skin. The offer letter from Blue Ridge Innovations lay on the table, its crisp pages signed in my steady hand. Director of Client Strategy, double my old salary, a team to lead, a future to shape. It should have felt like a victory, but Catherine Reynolds's words clung to me like damp fog. Actions have consequences. What game was she playing? And why did Susan Mitchell, a Peak Pulse board member, want to... My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. A text from Ethan Hayes, Peak Pulse's IT specialist. Office is a circus. Catherine's been on the phone all day yelling about Blue Ridge. Rumor is they're pulling their contract. You okay? I typed back, I'm fine, thanks for the heads up. But I wasn't fine. Not entirely. The humiliation of being escorted out of Peak Pulse still stung, a raw wound beneath my calm exterior. And Susan's message. Catherine may have overstepped, raised more questions than answers. Why was the board intervening? Catherine was their golden girl, the executive who'd turned Peak Pulse into a regional powerhouse. If she'd fired me without approval, what else was she hiding? Another buzz. Megan Walsh, the receptionist. Catherine just stormed out, looked like she was going to cry. Everyone's saying Blue Ridge is done with us. Did you know? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Did I know? Not officially, but Michael Brooks's urgency this afternoon, the way he'd hinted at Peak Pulse's failings, suggested Blue Ridge was ready to cut ties. I'd been their anchor, the one who'd salvaged their account after a botched campaign 3 years ago. Without me, Catherine was scrambling to hold a sinking ship together. I replied, heard rumors, stay safe in the chaos. Setting the phone down, I stared at the offer letter. Blue Ridge wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline, a chance to reclaim my worth. But Catherine's cryptic threat and Susan's sudden outreach felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't yet see. Tomorrow's meeting at Peak Pulse would be my chance to find out. I wasn't going back to beg for my job. I was going to face them as Emma Carter, the woman they'd underestimated, and I'd walk away on my terms. The next morning, I woke with a fire in my chest. The mirror reflected a woman ready for battle. Charcoal suit, sharp eyeliner, hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. I wasn't dressing to impress Peak Pulse. I was dressing to remind myself who I was, a professional, a leader, someone who'd earned every inch of her success, even if Catherine couldn't see it. As I drove to Peak Pulse's downtown office, the city buzzed with morning energy. Baristas slinging lattes, commuters weaving through traffic, the Rockies looming in the distance. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying yesterday's confrontation. Catherine's smirk, her accusation of disloyalty, the highlighted email that had unraveled 6 years of my life. How had she found it? I'd been careful, using my personal email, scheduling the Blue Ridge interview during a dental appointment. Someone had tipped her off. But who? I parked outside Peak Pulse's building, its beige facade a stark contrast to Blue Ridge's gleaming glass tower. The lobby felt like a time capsule. Faded carpet, outdated furniture, a faint whiff of stale coffee. Megan Walsh was at the reception desk, her eyes widening as I approached. "Emma," she whispered, leaning forward. "You're here for Susan Mitchell, right? Everyone's talking about you. They're saying Catherine messed up big time." I signed the visitor log, my pen steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Just tying up loose ends," I said, keeping my tone light. What's the mood upstairs? Megan glanced around, then lowered her voice. Tense. Catherine's been in her office all morning, blinds shut. Ethan says she's been emailing the board nonstop trying to cover her tracks. And get this, Blue Ridge sent a formal notice an hour ago. They're reviewing their contract. My heart skipped. Reviewing didn't mean terminating, but it was a step closer. Michael had warned me Peak Pulse was on thin ice. If Blue Ridge pulled out, Peak Pulse would lose 30% of its revenue, a blow Catherine might not survive. Thanks, Megan, I said, offering a small smile. You've always been a gem. She blushed, waving me off. Just don't let them drag you back into this mess. You're too good for it. The elevator ride to the 5th floor was a slow climb, each ding amplifying my nerves. I rehearsed my approach. Stay calm, stay firm. Don't let Susan's offer, whatever it was, sway me. Blue Ridge was my future. Peak Pulse was my past. But as the doors opened, I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was about more than reinstatement. Susan's text had been too vague, too urgent. What did the board know? Susan Mitchell waited in the boardroom, a sleek space with a long oak table and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Denver's skyline. She was in her 60s, silver hair cut in a precise bob, her tailored blazer exuding quiet authority. Unlike Catherine's theatrical power plays, Susan's presence was understated but commanding, like a judge about to deliver a verdict. Miss Carter, she said, standing to shake my hand, thank you for coming on short notice. Please, sit. I took a seat across from her, noting the slim folder on the table. My personnel file, I guessed, or something more incriminating. The door was closed, no Catherine in sight. That alone was telling. I'll be direct, Susan began, opening the folder. Your termination yesterday was not authorized by the board. Catherine acted unilaterally, citing a breach of loyalty. I've reviewed your file. 6 years of exemplary performance, a tripled client portfolio, and Blue Ridge Innovations as your crowning achievement. What I don't see is any justification for your dismissal. Her words were a balm to the wound Catherine had inflicted, but I stayed guarded. Catherine seemed to think my interview with Blue Ridge was justification enough, I said, my tone neutral. Susan's eyebrow arched, a flicker of disapproval crossing her face. An interesting choice of words, given the circumstances. There's no company policy prohibiting external interviews, and frankly, given your compensation history, I'm surprised you stayed as long as you did. I leaned forward, curiosity piqued. My compensation history? She tapped the folder. 3 formal requests for salary adjustments, all denied, each accompanied by detailed metrics: revenue growth, client retention, industry awards. I wasn't aware of this pattern until yesterday. Major compensation decisions require board review, but Catherine handled these under her discretionary authority. The revelation hit like a spark. Catherine hadn't just denied my raises, she'd buried them, keeping the board in the dark. Why? To keep me underpaid? To protect her own budget? Or something more personal? I assumed the board was informed, I said carefully. Catherine always framed it as a collective decision. Tight budgets, infrastructure investments. Susan's lips pressed into a thin line. She's been operating with significant autonomy. Too significant, it seems. She closed the folder, her gaze steady. Ms. Carter, the board would like to offer you reinstatement, senior account director, with the salary you requested in your last review, plus a 10% increase, effective immediately. The offer hung in the air, tempting but hollow. 6 months ago I would have jumped at it. Now it felt like a bandage on a broken bone. I thought of Blue Ridge's glass tower, Michael's confidence in me, the chance to lead a team. Then I thought of Catherine's smirk, her threat, the cardboard box still sitting on my counter. That's generous, I said, choosing my words with precision. But I've accepted a position elsewhere. I start Monday. Susan's expression didn't waver, but her eyes sharpened. With Blue Ridge Innovations, I presume. I hesitated. Confirming could complicate things. Contracts weren't finalized, and I didn't trust Peak Pulse not to meddle. I'd rather not disclose that, I said, keeping my tone firm but polite. My decision isn't just about compensation, it's about respect. Peak Pulse expected loyalty but didn't reciprocate. 3 years of denied raises, then a public firing for exploring my options. That's not a culture I can return to. Susan nodded, a hint of respect in her gaze. A fair assessment. But let me ask you something, Emma. If we could address the respect issue, new leadership, perhaps, would that change your mind? The question caught me off guard. New leadership? Was she hinting at removing Catherine? The idea was tantalizing, but it raised a red flag. Why would the board consider such a drastic move over one firing, unless Catherine's overstep was part of a bigger pattern? I appreciate the hypothetical, I said, sidestepping the trap, but my path is set. I'm here to provide closure, not to negotiate a return. Susan studied me for a moment, then stood, extending her hand. Thank you for your candor. Whatever your next steps, I wish you success. And, Emma, if you hear from Blue Ridge about their contract with us, I'd appreciate a heads up. Catherine's concerned they may reconsider. There it was. The real reason for this meeting, not my firing, not my value to Peak Pulse, but fear of losing Blue Ridge's $10 million 0 cents annual contract. I shook her hand, my smile polite but guarded. That's a question for Blue Ridge, I said. I'm no longer involved in that relationship. As I left the boardroom, Susan's words echoed. New leadership. Was Catherine's throne crumbling? And if so, what would she do to save it? Outside, the Denver sun was high, casting sharp shadows across the pavement. I slid into my car, my mind a whirlwind. Susan's offer was a lifeline Peak Pulse couldn't afford to lose. But it came too late. Blue Ridge was my future, and Catherine's desperation was her own doing. Still, her actions have consequences. Gnawed at me. Was she planning to sabotage my new role? Leak something to Blue Ridge? Or was it all a bluff? A last-ditch effort to scare me into compliance? My phone buzzed as I pulled onto the highway. A voicemail from Rachel Turner. Emma, call me ASAP. Ethan just found something weird on the server. Catherine's been digging through your emails, personal ones, not just work. I don't know what she's looking for, but it's bad. Call me. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Personal emails? That was a violation, even for Catherine. Peak Pulse's IT policies were strict. Accessing personal accounts without consent could get her fired, maybe sued. What was she after? A smoking gun to justify my firing? Or something to discredit me with Blue Ridge? I called Rachel, my voice tight. What did Ethan find? Emma? Thank God, she said, her words tumbling out. Ethan was doing a routine server check and noticed Catherine's admin account pulling archives from your personal Gmail. She's been at it since last week, before she fired you. He can't see what she accessed, but it's hundreds of emails. My stomach churned. Last week? That meant Catherine had known about my Blue Ridge interview before the email she'd waved in my face. The dental appointment excuse hadn't tipped her off. Someone had. Or she'd been spying on me for days, maybe weeks. Does Ethan have proof? I asked, my mind racing. He's got logs, but he's freaking out. If Catherine finds out he's snooped, he's toast. What do you want him to do? Tell him to save the logs, but don't touch anything else, I said. I need to think this through. And Rachel, don't tell anyone else, not yet. Got it, she said. Emma, be careful. Catherine's not just mad. She's obsessed. Ethan says she's been ranting about you in private, calling you a traitor. This feels personal. I hung up, my heart pounding. Personal. Rachel was right. This wasn't just about Blue Ridge or my interview. Catherine's vendetta ran deeper, and I needed to know why before she made her next move. Blue Ridge's headquarters was a breath of fresh air after Peak Pulse's stifling office. The 30th floor lobby was a symphony of glass and light, with open workspaces buzzing with creativity. Young professionals collaborated at standing desks, their energy infectious. Unlike Peak Pulse's beige monotony, this place felt alive, a place where ideas thrived. I felt a pang of excitement. This was where I belonged. Michael Brooks met me in the reception area, his easy smile cutting through my tension. "Emma, glad you're here," he said, shaking my hand. "Ready to see your new world?" I nodded, pushing Catherine's shadow to the back of my mind. "Absolutely." He led me through the workspace, introducing me to faces I'd only known through emails and Zoom calls. Lila Chen, a data analyst, grinned and said, "Your last campaign was fire. We're stoked you're joining us." Jake Ruiz, a creative director, clapped me on the shoulder. "About time we got you in-house. Peak Pulse didn't deserve you." Their warmth was disarming, but Michael's earlier words lingered. "Whatever Catherine's planning, don't let it get to you." Did he know something, or was he just reading the room, sensing Catherine's desperation? In his office, Michael poured us coffee and got to the point. "I heard from Catherine again this morning. She's pitching hard to keep our account, offering discounts, new team members, the works. But she's missing the point. Our issue isn't price, it's trust." I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. "Trust has been an issue for a while, hasn't it?" He nodded, leaning back. "For months. Delayed responses, half-baked deliverables. Except for your work. You've been the exception, Emma. That's why we're here." He slid a revised offer letter across the table. "I've added a signing bonus. Call it a welcome to the family." I glanced at the paper, my breath catching. The bonus was $20,000, 0 cents, on top of the already generous salary. "Michael, this is more than I expected." "You've earned it," he said, his tone firm. "But I need to be clear. This role is big. You'll be leading a team of 5, managing every marketing partnership we have. That includes overseeing the transition if we move away from Peak Pulse." The weight of his words settled over me. Transition. He was all but confirming Blue Ridge was done with Peak Pulse, and I'd be the one handling the fallout, facing Catherine's wrath head on. "I'm ready," I said, meeting his gaze. "But I need to ask, how did you hear about my firing so fast yesterday? Catherine called you right after, didn't she?" Michael's smile was cryptic. "She did, but I also have my sources. Let's just say Denver's a small world, and loyalty talks louder than contracts." Sources. The word sent a shiver down my spine. Someone at Peak Pulse was feeding Michael information. Ethan? Megan? Or someone higher up, like Susan. The puzzle grew murkier, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a pawn in a larger game. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the Blue Ridge offer letter beside a takeout container of pad thai. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from Peak Pulse colleagues, LinkedIn requests, even a cryptic email from a former client. "Heard you left Peak Pulse, call me if you're free, big things coming." But Rachel's voicemail kept me up. Catherine digging through my personal emails. It wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. If I could prove it, I could turn the tables. But proof was risky. Ethan was already nervous, and confronting Catherine without hard evidence could backfire. Worse, what if she found something in those emails? I'd always been careful. But personal accounts held fragments of a life. Venting to Rachel about work, a flirty exchange with an old colleague, a draft resignation letter I'd never sent. In the wrong hands, anything could be twisted. I called Ethan, keeping my voice low. "Can you access those logs without Catherine knowing?" He hesitated, his voice shaky. "Maybe. But, Emma, she's got admin access to everything. If she catches me, I'm done. And there's something else." My pulse quickened. "What?" "I found a memo in her shared drive, accidentally, I swear. It's from last month, addressed to the board. She recommended outsourcing our biggest accounts, including Blue Ridge, to a cheaper agency in Chicago. Said it would streamline costs." I froze. Outsourcing Blue Ridge? That would have gutted my role, maybe the whole team. Was that why Catherine had kept me underpaid? To make outsourcing more appealing? Or was it a cover for something else? A way to push me out before I could fight back? "Save that memo," I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "Don't tell anyone. I'll handle it." The next morning, I arrived at Blue Ridge early, my new office waiting, a corner space with windows framing the Rockies. A welcome basket sat on the desk, coffee beans, a Blue Ridge mug, a handwritten note from Michael, to new beginnings. I smiled, but the weight of Ethan's discovery pressed against me. Catherine's memo, her email snooping, Susan's cryptic offer. Pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was still blurry. At 9 a.m., Michael introduced me to my team. 5 sharp marketers, their eyes bright with ambition. Lila Chen pitched a bold campaign idea on the spot. Jake Ruiz sketched a logo that made me laugh. They were my people, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. But at noon, an email from Michael changed everything. Subject: Peak Pulse contract update. I opened it, my heart racing. After careful review, Blue Ridge Innovations will terminate our marketing contract with Peak Pulse Media, effective immediately. We've selected Meridian Creative as our new partner. Emma, you'll oversee the transition. Details to follow. I stared at the screen, a mix of triumph and dread washing over me. Peak Pulse had lost Blue Ridge. 30% of their revenue gone. Catherine's empire was crumbling, and I was the one holding the gavel. But as I imagined her reaction, shock, rage, desperation, a new fear crept in. If Catherine was desperate enough to snoop through my emails, what would she do now? That afternoon, Megan messaged me on LinkedIn. "Office is a war zone." Catherine's screaming at the board, blaming everyone but herself. 3 account managers are updating their resumes. Karma's real. A reply: there was no need to gloat. Instead, I focused on my team, sketching out transition plans for Meridian Creative. Success was my answer, not revenge. But late that night, as I stepped onto my balcony, a new email arrived. From Catherine, subject: "We need to talk." My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won. I opened it. "Emma, I know you're behind Blue Ridge's decision. You think you've won, but you don't know the whole story. Meet me tomorrow, 7 p.m. at the Rooftop Lounge. Come alone. You deserve to know the truth." The truth? My blood ran cold. Was this a trap? A desperate plea? Or did Catherine have one last card to play? As the Denver skyline glowed below, I knew one thing. Tomorrow I'd face her. Not as the employee she'd fired, but as the woman who'd risen above her, and whatever truth she claimed to hold, I was ready to uncover it.